we're going to be talking about the difference between two-dimensional and three-dimensional shapes. Now, to start off, we should probably ask ourselves, what exactly is a 2D shape? Now, a 2D shape is a shape that only has a height and a width. So we typically, like in a math, we would find the area of a 2D shape, which is the length times width. And a typical 2D shape is flat and we thought of as being able to be printed by a standard printer. So like anything you can print on a piece of paper is 2D. Now we're going to talk about some examples of 2D shapes. And then we're going to click out here real fast. So we're going to do some drawing on here. Our very first 2D shape is going to be pretty easy. It's going to be our simple circle. And then our next one is going to be our oval. Now, the difference between those is you can think of an oval as kind of like an egg shape. So we're gonna, all right, little sample egg. Have you seen egg? The little, not perfectly even. That's a little our egg. Next, we have a triangle, which again is all three sides are the same. And then we have a square, which is all four sides are the same throughout. And then we have a rectangle. Now, rectangle is kind of like a square, but the opposite sides are parallel, or I'm sorry, equivalent to each other. This is where we're going to get a lot of views. We next have a hexagon. Now, a hexagon is a six-sided shape. They're all equal. And then we move on to an octagon, which is eight shapes. So like an octopus has eight legs, but eight sides, kind of like it's a stop sign. So you can think of it as a stop sign. And then we have a pentagon, which is five sides. It's kind of like I think of in a way as like a little house. It's a little house. It's five-sided. No. We'll move on to a little more confusing shapes. And first move on to a rhombus, which is I like to think of it as kind of like a weird looking square. All the sides are parallel to each other. So they go in this direction, they go in this direction, and they never cross each other in either same side. And all the sides are the same length. So it's kind of like a funky little shifted square. And next you have a parallelogram, which is kind of like a shifted rectangle. These two, the opposing sides again are going to be equivalent to each other in the length, but then they're also parallelograms. So the sides again, kind of like a rhombus, are not going to run into each other. They're parallel. So it's going to be a parallelogram. We have a right triangle. And a right triangle is kind of like it's a regular triangle, except the only difference is it'll make a right angle in the corner, which is a 90-degree angle, so it meets an equal side right here. And last we have a trapezoid, which has sides that are equivalent on here. And that is a trapezoid. Now we are going to move on to what is a 3D shape. Now, a 3D shape is defined as a shape or a solid that holds three dimensions. And 3D shape cannot be printed on a normal paper. It can't be printed on a piece of paper like our 2D shapes. And then it, as well as a height and a width, but it also has a depth. So it's a third little multiplication side for us. And we like to call that when you deal with multiplying 3D shapes, we like to call that the volume instead of the area. Now, some examples of them are going to be as a cube, which is like a square big. So we're thinking that like if we look at stuff at home, we think of like a box or a Rubik's cube. And next we're thinking of a rectangular prism. Now it's like a rectangular but chunked out. And a typical rectangular prism can be like a book we have at home, or in this case, we have a shoebox. And then we next have a sphere, which is like a big inflated ball, pretty much what it is, big inflated circle, and the example is like a ball. We next have a cylinder, and that is where it has a flat side on this side, a flat side on the bottom, and then it curves in on each other throughout the center. The example is this is a balloon inflator, or you can also think of a can of soup or a can of some sort. And our last one we're going to go over is a cone, which is kind of like tips or points at the end, but then it's flat on the other side. So this would be flat if you took away this. And our example could be like an ice cream cone or a chocolate cone. Now, for our homework, we are going to have a worksheet that I have printed that will go over 2D shapes, and you'll write down underneath the corresponding shapes what the names are, and just write, because there are some extras, just focus on the ones we just talked about in our lesson. And then for 3D shapes, I want you to take all 5 of those that we just went over in the 3D. I want you to go around your house and look to see for some other examples of different kinds of 3D shapes that correspond with the names we just went over, and write them down in your math journal and how you know it is that shape. So if you find something that's a cube, let me know how you know it was a cube. Same with a cone. Let me know what you see. Thank you.